and welcome. Tonight, it's wrong to label all lawyers as corrupt, and that's coming from the NBA President Afam Osigwe over comments by EFCC Chairman Ola Olukoyede on the role of lawyers in facilitating major financial frauds in the country. In spite of increased revenue by ministries, departments and agencies, the federal government still needs more borrowing to fund its budget, and that's according to the Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Olawale Edun. And Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare Professor Ali Pate says rollout of malaria vaccines kicks off nationwide this month, starting with the most hard-hit states. In our business news, National Bureau of Statistics reports that Nigeria's GDP grows by 3.46% in the third quarter of 2024.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria Super Falcons will face France in Saturday's international friendly without captain Rashida Ajibade, who has been ruled out owing to injury.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, Speaker House of Representatives Abbas Tajuddin calls for collaboration with the National Assembly to enact laws that will eliminate gender-based violence in Nigeria.
And in international news from London, tens of thousands of protesters are closing in on Pakistan's capital as part of nationwide protests calling for the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan.
The president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Afam Osigwe, has expressed strong reservations over recent remarks by the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, Mr. Ola Olukoyede, over the role of lawyers in financial frauds. Mr. Osigwe, who acknowledged that no profession is entirely free from ethical breaches or misconduct, described the sweeping characterization of lawyers as primary enablers of financial crimes as both inaccurate and unwarranted. Mr. Osigwe made these remarks during the unveiling of the 2025 NBA Annual General Conference logo and theme.
We do not think that it would be right for any person, whether EFCC chairman or any person for that matter, to tar all lawyers with the bribe of being involved in money laundering. And we issued a statement and we challenged the EFCC chairman to come up with empirical evidence, and that if he cannot, never to make such statements. And unfortunately, he's one of us, a lawyer. We issued a statement and we drew his attention to the fact that many men and women who make the investigation and prosecution of the cases by EFCC worthwhile are lawyers. Is he also suggested that those lawyers are aiding in money laundering and financing of terrorism? It is common in Nigeria for people to make hasty generalization, and yet very few lawyers, to my knowledge, have been prosecuted by the EFCC for aiding money laundering. We are proud members of the legal profession, and we draw a line in performing our professional duties and in aiding the commission of crime. We don't do that. There may be a few bad eggs, but that does not represent the picture or the majority of lawyers who toil to build up a reputation of integrity, a reputation of professionalism, and an EFCC chairman should not, for whatever reason, soiling that image by portraying all of us, me and you, as aiders of money laundering.
Meanwhile, the absence of Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court Abuja has stalled a 50 billion naira suit filed by the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, against the federal government. The matter could not proceed today because Justice Ekwo was on an official engagement. The case was subsequently fixed for February the 11th, 2025. For further mention, Mr. Kanu's counsel, Aloy Ejimako, had in one of the proceedings told Justice Ekwo that he filed a notice for a change of counsel. Mr. Ejimako told the court that he will be taking over the case from Mr. Mike Ozekome, who filed the suit on April the 7th, 2022. Mr. Kanu had sued the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Attorney General of the Federation as first and second defendants over allegations bordering on violation of his rights, alleging that he was kidnapped from Kenya and brought back to Nigeria to stand trial. The federal government is planning to borrow more money, depending and deep on the approval from the National Assembly. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edu, made this revelation during an interactive session of the Senate Joint Committees on Finance and National Planning and Economic Affairs on the 2025 to 2027 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper in Abuja. Our National Assembly correspondent Gloria Umezuke reports.
It's an interactive session by the Senate Joint Committee on Finance, coming days after President Bola Tinubu submitted the medium-term expenditure and fiscal strategy paper to the National Assembly. Ministers of Finance, Budget and Economic Planning, DG Budget Office, NNPCL, among others, are in attendance.
We're expecting a robust bumper harvest this year, and this normally accounts for 40% of inflation.
In the fact-finding exercise, the revenue-generating agencies delineated their 2024 budget performance as well as the 2025 revenue projections.
As at the middle of November, sometimes last week, we have reached these targets. We will expect to make an increase of 20% on the 2024 performance.
Mr. Chairman, we will exceed our overall delivery by at least ₦1 trillion. Our target, our budget was 12.3 trillion, but we'll meet 13.1 trillion by the end of this year. We will deliver at least 23.7 trillion naira to the Federation next year.
The presentations by the agencies apparently indicated excess revenue targets for 2024, prompting the question of borrowing.
All the presentation made, they said they have made their target. What has been collected is over 51 trillion naira. And what has been budgeted is 30-something trillion. What are we doing with the excess revenue?
Borrowing, as we've said, is not a crime, it's not a problem. When we borrow in line with what is being approved for us by National Assembly, we are actually carrying out our responsibility. So meeting the target and borrowing, they are not conflicting, and it's not self-serving.
The revenue effort has been good, but we still need to do better. And in the meantime, we still need to borrow productively, effectively, and sustainably, all in our name to help the poorest and most vulnerable.
However, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission have different views on the subject of borrowing.
My brothers in NNPC, we should go back and look at the OICs. The revenue hanging in that OICs is in dollars. If we can direct this into our accounts, we don't need to borrow.
What is important for countries as well as companies, that is what analysts pay attention to, is the projection consistent with what the entity say it is doing. Are we funding a strategy? Yes, we are.
The Joint Committee is now expected to peruse over all the reports, particularly of other agencies unable to make their presentation ahead of the passage of the MTEF and Fiscal Strategy paper this week. Meanwhile, in view of some unsatisfactory responses, the Finance Committee has further invited the NNPC, RAMFAC, as well as the Nigeria Immigration Service for another urgent session to provide clarifications on the critical issue of revenue. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Experts within Nigeria's finance and entrepreneurial ecosystem have advocated innovative finance models to help unlock Nigeria's entrepreneurial potentials. They made the call at the 10th edition of the Policy Dialogue series organized by Faith Foundation, which took place at the EcoBank Center right here in Lagos.
This year's dialogue series witnessed the roll call of some of the policymakers driving Nigeria's entrepreneurial environment. They're here to give insights into various topics at the 10th edition of the Faith Institute Policy Dialogue Series, PDS. One after the other, the speakers articulate incubation programs, accelerator initiatives, and regulatory reforms.
As we reflect with a future-forward focus, our intent for today's conversation is to focus on how our country, Nigeria, can leverage policy interventions, innovative financing models, digital transformation, and sustainable development to build a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem for the future.
We stand on the cusp of a new decade and celebrate the anniversary of this intellectual annual dialogue series. It is imperative to harness the power of trade, technology, and inclusive finance to unlock Nigeria's entrepreneurial potential.
And all their reports. You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
In her keynote address, Minister for Trade and Investment, Jumoke Oduwole, speaks on regulatory reforms within the Nigerian business environment.
I urge us all to deepen our commitment to creating an enabling environment through thoughtful reforms and investments. I say the word thoughtful because it's one thing to have data, it's another thing to use it.
Queuing in from the topic of the day, panelists expatiate on entrepreneurial development in Nigeria.
We must pay attention to the national quality infrastructure, not just for education, but for education for our tradable services and skills, education for development, education for entrepreneurship, education for growth. And that's how we will win.
We're looking at the fact that we are not able to have the kind of competencies that we need to grow our own industry. It's very critical, and not just us as in agriculture, but the allied competencies that should work with us.
There is still a high level of perception of opportunities in Nigeria, and all our panels consistently talked about the land still being green.
Platforms like this allow for you to continue to engage with government officials until you see some form of result or implementation.
Organizers believe bringing together stakeholders to share insights, Nigeria can unlock the full potential of its entrepreneurship opportunities, drive growth, create employment, and foster socio-economic transformation in the country.
In Edo State, the governor, Mr. Monde Okpeholo, has stated his determination to rid the state of criminals and restore peace to the heartbeat of the nation. Governor Okpeholo, who made this known during the swearing-in ceremony of new appointees at the State Government House in Benin City, the state capital, also charged them to put the interest of the state ahead of theirs. Among those sworn in are Mr. Emmanuel Okebor as Commissioner for Finance, Mr. Padi Inyamu as Chairman, State Universal Basic Education Board, and a retired Commissioner of Police Friday Bading as Coordinator, Edo Security Network. The new Finance Commissioner, who spoke on behalf of others, assured the Governor and the people of Edo State that they are committed to serving the state.
Edo first, before your personal goal, out of trust and believe in you, your hard work, I know you are going to rebuild our educational system. When we say New Edo is rising, this is the time to show it. For the security man, I believe in you. You have been a commissioner of police. You are not just a pushover. It is time to pursue the criminals and send them out of our land. The Finance Commissioner also, you've been there and you know the job. You have not just come in today as somebody who just pick on the street. You have experience in banking. And your experience, you have to bring it to bear to save our land, save our money for us, and let us use the money to develop our state. Thank you, and God bless you.
I want to first of all thank God for this opportunity to serve the group of Edo State. I also want to thank the executive governor of Edo State, Senator Monde Okpeholo, and the deputy governor, then his Right Honorable Dennis Idausa, and other members of the executive council. We are committed to help support the governor to achieve his 5-point agenda orders so that Edo will be better. And that's our commitment. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
In part two, after the break, the Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, says the rollout of malaria vaccines will kick off nationwide this month, starting with the most hard-hit states. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. It's wrong to label all lawyers as corrupt, and that's coming from the NBA president, Afam Osigwe, over comments by the EFCC chairman, Olao Lukoyede, on the role of lawyers in facilitating major financial frauds in the country. In spite of increased revenue by ministries, departments and agencies, the federal government still needs more borrowing to fund its budget, and that's according to the coordinating minister for the economy, Olawale Edun. Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, says the rollout of malaria vaccine kicks off nationwide this month, starting with the most hard-hit states. And federal prosecutor drops all criminal charges against Donald Trump after his victory in the 2024 presidential election. The Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Professor Ali Pate, has outlined key initiatives to accelerate malaria elimination in Nigeria, coinciding with the rollout of malaria vaccine this month. According to him, the campaign will prioritize states most affected by the disease. Speaking during a meeting with the Independent Advisory Group on Malaria Elimination in Nigeria in Abuja today, Professor Pate highlighted recent milestones, including the mass distribution of mosquito nets and the arrival of the R21 malaria vaccine.
So the first was to establish this body, which will be independent, which will be candid, which will advise us on how best to drive forward towards our objective of accelerating Nigeria's progress of malaria elimination, whether it's reducing the prevalence or halving the mortality or expanding access to prevention and treatment. And we also said that we would have a costed plan that is pragmatic, that makes explicit the trade-offs that will have to be met in the context of limited resources. And we mentioned that we will expand case management, including domesticating the affordable medicines for malaria facility within the context of Nigeria, given the size of Nigeria, given the deficit and the need for quality, cost-effective medications to treat those who are affected by malaria as part of this effort.
And that's why I'm congratulating you for this swap that you have. And that's putting malaria in, putting immunization, strengthening your health system, which is really what is so important in Nigeria. Because I've been here for polio also, and I know the immunization system, the health system, how you've tried to bring it on its own with different, whatever you've been putting. But here it seems as if it's coming together. Everything in one. It's one plan. It's one report. It's one budget. It's one everything.
We have more for you on the news at 10 as we head over to Abuja studios now, where Malkwe Ogun Yusuf is standing by to give us more. Hello, Malkwe.
Hello, Anne. Well, advocacy leads the way tonight as the federal government has emphasized empowering women as a key strategy to combat gender-based violence in the country. The Minister of Women Affairs, Iman Suleiman Ibrahim, made the call during a news conference in the FCT to kick off the 16 Days of Activism, a global campaign against gender-based violence. Similarly, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, urged stronger collaboration with the National Assembly to address the issue effectively.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, joined other federal lawmakers and their spouses for a road walk from the National Assembly to launch the 2024 16 Days of Activism against gender-based violence. The annual international campaign highlights the growing crisis of violence against women. This year, it draws attention to alarming statistics from the United Nations, revealing that a woman is killed every 11 minutes globally. The Speaker called for stronger collaboration to combat the menace.
I want to say it categorically clear here that the National Assembly will do everything humanly possible to ensure that all forms of violence against women and girls are drastically reduced, if not completely eliminated, in the very near future.
In a related event, the Minister of Women Affairs, Imam Suleiman Ibrahim, held a news conference to mark the campaign's commencement. She emphasized women empowerment as a critical solution to gender-based violence.
We have to empower women economically. Because when the woman is empowered, she's very vulnerable, so she doesn't really get violated like that. And that's where we come very strong. You don't see those stronger women. Because when you have money and you don't just ask a man for money, what does the abuse start at? And do you understand? So when people are empowered and they're knowledgeable, they have information, they're able to protect themselves. So we don't have to do it. Gender-based violence. And gentlemen,
Meanwhile, the former Ekiti State First Lady, Bisi Fayemi, raised concerns about increasing cases of sexual harassment on campuses and called for urgent measures to address the issue.
Many male lecturers all over have a sense of entitlement to the bodies of their female students. These male lecturers have enormous power over their students, and they use that power to threaten, cajole, obstruct justice, collude, persuade, and reward. Tertiary institutions should take this issue seriously and put in place strategies to support female students who might fall into these traps.
The United Nations designates November 25 to December 10 annually to raise awareness and promote actionable solutions to end violence against women.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the UNODC, has launched a 2024 edition of the 16 Days of Activism, highlighting the alarming rise in gender-based violence over the past 2 decades. UNODC country representative Mr. Sheikh Turi explained that this year's theme, Unite to End Violence Against Women, focuses on strategies to combat violence against the female gender.
This year's theme, Unite to End Violence Against Women, isn't just a catchy slogan. It is a powerful rallying cry for accountability on action. It's a call to arms. We need action, not words. Accountability, not excuses. Resources, not empty promises. We must demand that all duty bearers, especially states, take decisive steps to address the issues highlighted in the 30 years review of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, Accountability, Recommitment, and Resourcing. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, has been at the forefront of addressing femicide globally. Let's talk hard facts. 89,000 women, girls intentionally killed in 2022, the highest in 2 decades. Over 1 million crimes related to violence against women and girls were recorded in 2022-2023, accounting to 20% of all police-recorded crime. At least 1 in 12 women become victims each year.
In security matters, Vice President Kashim Shettima has directed the adoption of technology-driven strategies to combat terrorism, cybercrime, and border security challenges facing Nigeria and the entire African continent. He made the call during a courtesy visit by members of the Executive Intelligence Management Course 17 from the National Institute for Security Studies, NIST, at the Presidential Villa. According to him, while Africa and Nigeria are currently navigating some of the most troubling times in areas such as security and economy, the challenges require innovative solutions.
Most of the observations on the theme of this year's course are very pertinent and relevant to our current discourse in the nation. Highlighting the paralyzing effect of fear, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in his inaugural address on March 4, 1933, said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." I know Africa and Nigeria are going through some very turbulent times, especially in the security arena and in the economic front. And AI presents a vista of opportunities for us to address issues on agriculture, on healthcare, on financial inclusion, and on security issues. I'm an eternal optimist. I believe most of these things are doable. Africa is the youngest continent. The average age of the Nigerian nation is 16.9. And we have a pool of technologically savvy young men that we can harness.
Vice President Kashim Shettima. Staying with security, the Nigerian Navy has dismissed allegations made by the Chief Executive Officer of the Pipeline Security Company, Mr. Tom Polo, accusing its personnel of involvement in crude oil theft. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the Chief of Training and Operations, Rear Admiral Eugenio Ferreira, labeled the claims as fabrications by an individual whose illegal oil theft activities have been curtailed by intensified naval operations.
The Nigerian Navy has continued to respond to current and emerging security threats in the maritime domain. This is to enhance maritime security and create the desired environment for economic prosperity and national development. In this regard, the Nigerian Navy conducts anti-oil theft, anti-piracy, anti-smuggling, and anti-illegal fishing operations, amongst other functions. Anti-oil theft operations remain the Navy's most critical function due to the contribution of oil revenue to Nigeria's economic survival. The Nigerian Navy will continue to remain focused in carrying out our functions as a highly professional and dedicated force in line with our statutory rules. In doing so, the Navy will continue to work with sister services, partners, and credible stakeholders in line with the whole of society approach in protecting our nation's resources for economic prosperity and national development.
Still ahead on the news at 10, the National Bureau of Statistics reports that Nigeria's GDP grows by 3.46% in the third quarter of 2024. That's on business news. Please join us again.
Welcome back. The governor of Taraba State, Abu Kefas, has presented an estimate of 429.89 billion naira as a 2025 budget to the State House of Assembly for consideration. During the presentation, Governor Kefas disclosed that the appropriation bill tagged Budget of Transformation. In a similar vein, Katsina State Governor Diko Rada has also presented an appropriation bill of 682.24 billion nara's budget proposal for the 2025 to the State House of Assembly tagged Budget of Consolidation. The spending plan significantly targets education, agriculture, and livestock development.
Dr. Mike Diogen. The season of budget presentation continues for subnationals in the country, and this time, two state governors have simultaneously laid out their spending plans for next year. Right, Honorable Peter Ebeldia. In Taraba State, the governor Abu Kefas, who presented the budget proposal for next year to the State House of Assembly for consideration, says it reflects its administration's blueprint, which aims to transform the state's infrastructure and create opportunities for growth.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members, our strategic priorities for 2025 are 1, education. We will focus on the expansion of free, compulsory education and construction of modern schools using hydrophone block machines. 2, job creation, empowering youth through skill acquisition and entrepreneurship hubs. Infrastructure, development of roads, healthcare facilities, and renewable energy projects. Agriculture and natural resources will focus on mechanized farming and responsible mining activities.
His Excellency Dr. Abuke. The Speaker of the State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Kizito Bonzena, describes this year's budget performance as fair and assures a quick passage of the 2025 budget.
To remark here that judging from
The successes of the 2024 fiscal year, as mentioned above, the people of the state will witness another eventful year of effective and responsive governance, which is a manifestation of a strong, courageous, and focused leadership. The 10th Assembly of Taraba State House of Assembly, under my watch, has unanimously resolved to identify with you and all your programs that are tailored towards moving Taraba to the next level. We assure you we are going to give you our support, our backing to move Taraba to the next level. In conclusion,
Elsewhere in Katsina State, Governor Diko Rada presents his budget proposal for 2025 to the State House of Assembly, which represents a 40% increase from the previous year's budget of 200.54 billion naira.
All our budgets are designed for the benefit of our people. Everything we do is for our people, and that is how we will continue to do things along as we are here. The goal of this administration is to become a pioneer for participatory budgeting in Nigeria, and that is what we have been able to achieve with this budget. This House may recall that I personally led a budget participation exercise in our 3 senatorial zones. That endeavor was the first step towards a truly people-oriented budget and the first of its kind in our dear state.
On his part, the Speaker, Nazir Daura, commends the Governor for the budget of consolidation.
As His Excellency presents the 2025 draft budget estimate, we recognize the significant progress made in the previous year. I would like to commend Your Excellency for fostering a cordial relationship between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. We assure the citizen that the Honorable House will carefully analyze the draft budget, conduct effective oversight, and monitor the implementation of the developmental project outlined in the 2025 draft budget once it is approved.
The 2025 budget will be a crucial document for the state's efforts to address development needs, boost economic growth, and improve the quality of life for residents.
Which include, among others, opening new revenue windows.
Nigeria's GDP growth rate for this year is up next as we join Will Ebong now to give us this story and more from the world of business. Thank you, Anne. Nigeria's GDP grew by 3.46% in the third quarter of 2024, an improvement from 3.19% in the second quarter and 2.54% in the third quarter of last year, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Now, non-oil activities dominated the economy, making up 94.43% of the GDP, driven by growth in the services, while oil accounted for just 5.57%. A breakdown of contributions from the non-oil sector shows that services contributed 53.58% to the GDP. Agriculture and industries also recorded improvements, adding 28.65% and 17.77% each to the country's economy. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has hailed Nigeria's third quarter GDP growth of 3.46% as reported by the National Bureau of Statistics. In a statement by his media advisor, President Tinubu says the growth reflects his commitment to boosting the economy and improving living standards for Nigerians. He reaffirms his $1 trillion economy target by 2030, adding that the upcoming rebasing of the economy in 2025 will better capture changes in key sectors driving growth. Now, still on matters concerning the economy, the NBS reports that Nigeria's unemployment rate fell to 4.3% in the second quarter of this year, down from 5.3% in the first quarter. Urban unemployment stood at 5.2%, while rural areas recorded a lower rate of 2.8%. Labor force participation rose to 79.5% in second quarter, up from 77.3% in the first quarter. Male and female participation rates were nearly identical at 79.9%
and 79.1% showing balanced gender involvement in the workforce. The employment to population increased to 76.1% in the second quarter of this year, marking a 2.9% improvement from the first quarter, though it was slightly lower than the 77.1% recorded in the second quarter of 2023. The Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee has commenced its two-day meeting today to decide on interest rates, which currently stands at 27.25%. This follows Nigeria's inflation surge to 33.88% in October 2024. The CBN Governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, has reaffirmed the bank's commitment to tackling inflation through monetary policies, including possible rate hikes. However, mixed reactions trailed the latest MPC meeting as experts closely watch the impact of MPC's decision on the economy. And as experts continue to watch the CBN MPC, the domestic equities market records a pullback ahead of decision day. Larry Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Reports. Well, it's a rate-setting week right here in Nigeria, and traders seem to be navigating the market with caution as we kick off the week down 0.21%, 97,626 points. And we see the market cap 59 trillion. Let's look at the sectors now. We see sell-offs continued with the banks today, from dipping over 2% for the week. Last week is a big one to start this week, 1.60%. The last trading week of November, starting off on the back foot, 3 basis points down for the consumer goods. So it's all red for the counters we track. Well, from the economic data released this week, showing growth continued in the third quarter of 2024. And interestingly, unemployment rates, that dipped about 4.3%. So since we're having decision day tomorrow, we'll see how this data shapes the MPC decision. Will it be a hold or another hike? Fingers crossed.
And that's a wrap on business. It's back to you, Anne.
Thank you, Will. The international conference on Conjoined twins has come to an end in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, leaving medical experts, theatre and nursing staff more fulfilled than when it started. Our correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports from Riyadh.
It has been 2 days of 4 daily sessions covering all aspects of conjoined twins care. Pre-surgery to post-op to rehabilitation in the long run.
We do plain x-rays, we do CT scan, we do MRI.
Surgeons from top hospitals worldwide address colleagues on procedures that have improved multidisciplinary approach to separating conjoined twins.
As we begin to talk about these case management in anesthesia in our department, we identify a team of anesthesia care providers that will be managing these patients. And the goal is to have this team identified and stick with the babies until the eventual separation. Due to the knowledge that these children will be coming for different procedures, which would include tissue expansion, or first prior to that, CT studies or radiological studies like MRI, they might need some sedation, might need anesthesia. We want to identify a team that would be assigned to those babies from the beginning.
For Saudi Arabia, techniques and know-how have improved over the last 30 years.
Every time there has been an improvement, not only in the know-how, not only in the techniques, but also in the technology. And with the commissioning of King Abdullah Specialized Children's Hospital, and the technology in the hospital, and the dedicated operating room and digitalization, I see it's not far from being here, whether it is related to the utilization of 3D printer, which is quite easily possible if it's not there already, and also the utilization of the virtual technologies.
Experts from different countries shared their experiences and thoughts.
Back home in South Africa, we have our own Conjoined twins programs, and it's done either in Cape Town and will be soon done in Johannesburg as well. The last one we did in 2021, and what I've learned from this conference is how humanity can come together, like different countries and different specialists, doctors and everybody else, to make something happen.
When the keynote speakers speak of the insufficient funds, technology from their countries, she said that the Saudi government was the one who supplied these things on them, and as a citizen of this country, it's just it's a glorious feeling knowing that this country does not only take care of its citizens, but also the rest of the world.
We have four now independent children who separated. Oh, well, they are doing great, especially for this who underwent this last year. They are still in Saudi, but thank God, I'm traveling with them when I'm going back to Tanzania. So even the mother can't wait. She has been here for 3 years.
Conference over. It's time to head back to continue the good work of separating conjoined twins, making what was once deemed impossible possible. In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News.
Still outside our country, special prosecutor who brought 2 key criminal cases against U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has asked judges to drop both charges after his victory at the presidential election. Here's Simon Puser with other international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Tens of thousands of protesters are closing in on Pakistan's capital Islamabad as part of nationwide protests calling for the release of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The march is in response to a final protest call made by Khan to his supporters, where he also called on them to remain in the capital until the government addresses their demands. Some top leaders of Khan's PTI party met him at the Rawalpindi prison, where he is serving a 3-year jail term for corruption, a charge he denies. Authorities have put Islamabad under lockdown, blocking highways and suspending mobile and internet services in certain areas. The march, which began on Sunday, has seen police using tear gas against protesters and reportedly arresting hundreds. A far-right pro-Russia candidate is set for a shock victory in the first round of Romania's presidential election, with preliminary results leaving the Prime Minister, his main pro-European rival, out of the race. With more than 99% of votes counted, ultra-nationalist Calin Georgescu has an unassailable lead of nearly 350,000 votes over centre-right candidate Elena Lasconi, with Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu, the pre-election favourite, in third. The strong showing of Georgescu, who has no party of his own and campaigned largely on the social media platform TikTok, came as the biggest surprise of the election. Lasconi is now on track to challenge Georgescu in a final runoff on the 8th of December. Meanwhile, a left-wing former history teacher, Yamandu Orsi, has won the presidential election in Uruguay. Orsi beat Alvaro Delgado, the candidate for the governing Conservative coalition, by more than 3 percentage points in Sunday's runoff. Delgado conceded defeat and congratulated Orsi and his Broad Front coalition, which will now return to power after 5 years of Conservative rule. The Broad Front governed Uruguay for 15 years, from 2005 to 2020, before being beaten by outgoing President Luis Lacalle Pou, who under Uruguay's constitution was barred from standing for a second consecutive term in this election. At least 1 person has died and 3 others have been injured after a cargo plane crashed near Vilnius airport in Lithuania in the early hours of Monday. The Boeing 737, operated for DHL by the Spanish cargo airline Swiftair, crashed near a house as it was in its final approach for landing. All 12 people have been safely evacuated from a property close to the crash site, according to police. The aircraft departed from DHL's hub at Leipzig airport just after 3 a.m. local time and crashed around an hour and a half later. Israel's military says around 250 rockets have been fired by Hezbollah across the border from Lebanon, marking one of the heaviest bombardments of Israel since fighting intensified in September. Several people were injured and buildings damaged in northern and central Israel, some of them near Tel Aviv. The attacks followed an Israeli strike on central Beirut on Saturday, in which the Lebanese Health Ministry said 29 people had been killed. Hezbollah, which has previously vowed to respond to attacks on Beirut by targeting Tel Aviv, said it had launched precision missiles at 2 military sites in the city and nearby. 2 turkeys called Peach and Blossom have been introduced at this year's National Thanksgiving, both set for their official pardon at the White House, the last in the Biden administration.
They're roughly 17 weeks old.
John Zimmerman, chairman of the National Turkey Federation and a second-generation farmer, raised the turkeys with his family in Northfield in Minnesota.
And I'd like you to meet Peach and Blossom.
His 9-year-old son Grant revealed the turkeys' names during a news conference. This year's ceremony marks the 77th annual National Thanksgiving Turkey presentation, continuing a cherished holiday tradition dating back to the Truman administration. And the 12th National Traditional Games of Ethnic Minorities of China has seen coconut tree climbing for the first time. It is a race against time and a battle of techniques. And since this sport's most important apparatus is unique to Hainan province, it is no wonder that the hosts are pretty good at it. The Hainan team swept both the men's and women's titles in the debuted coconut tree climbing competition at China's biggest ethnic sports event. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks indeed, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. Super Falcons captain Rashida Ajibade has been ruled out of Saturday's international friendly against the Le Bleu of France's head coach. Justin Madugu has called up 20 players for the game. Back to the team is Ashley Pomtre after a long injury layoff. CAF Awards nominee goalkeeper Chiamaka Nadoze, defender Osinachi Ohale, midfielders Christy Ucheibe and Jennifer Echejina, and forwards Gift Monday and Rishola Babajide are among the invited players. While the Blues are happy to take the game as part of their preparations for the League of Nations in the spring and 2025 Euros Women Championship in Switzerland in the summer, the Super Falcons of Nigeria will welcome the encounter as part of the process for building a new squad, as well as another test ahead of the 2025 Women Africa Cup of Nations holding next summer in Morocco. Ahead of Tuesday's night's UEFA Champions League tie against visitors Feyenoord, Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola wants his players to be completely committed to the club's cause as they look to end a dreadful run of results. City's losing streak stretched to 5 matches when Tottenham Hotspur stunned the Premier League champions with a 4-0 win at the Etihad on Saturday, marking the first time the manager had lost 5 games in a row in his career. Well, another manager, Hansi Flick, says Barcelona's recent form is a major worry as they slipped to a second successive La Liga game without a win. But the German is hopeful forward Yamin Lamal can soon return from injury to boost the side. The Spanish teenager is still recovering from an ankle sprain, but Flick's team can get back to winning ways without him when they host French side Brest in the Champions League on Tuesday. And that's your Sports News Tonight. I'm Kelly Egiga. It's back to Anne.
Thank you, Kelly. And the main news again. The president of the NBA, Afam Osigwe, today criticized the chairman of the EFCC, Olao Lukoyede, for allegedly indicting Nigerian lawyers of facilitating major financial frauds in the country. Also today, the coordinating minister of the economy, Olawale Edun, said the federal government needs more borrowing to fund its budget in spite of the increased revenue by MDAs. The minister was speaking at the public hearing on the 2025 to 2027 MTEF and fiscal strategy paper organized by the Senate Joint Committee on Finance and National Planning. And the federal prosecutor who brought 2 criminal cases against former U.S. President Donald Trump, now president-elect, has asked the vote to drop them after his victory in the 2024 presidential election. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. Have a wonderful night rest. Good night.